I do know that neurodivergent candidates, again, they're as smart as everyone else. They're as capable. They can do things that everyone else can. They might see things a little bit different. They might learn a little bit different from other people. But I think it's wrong for companies to maybe exclude some of these candidates just because they might think different. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to actually make your business better, having different perspectives.
There are opportunities for our work and careers everywhere, if you know where to look. That's easier said than done, especially in our fast-paced and constantly changing world. Marianne Fairmouth is talking to experts, employers, and job seekers to bring you insight and understanding about what's possible. This is Career Can Do, where we're navigating the new work world.
Welcome to the Career Can Do podcast, a top global podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the new work world. My name is Chris Sandland, and I will be the host for this episode. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Ramon Santillan, founder of Persuasive Interview, a coaching firm known for helping professionals turn interviews into offers. Ramon's journey from tax consultant to career strategist is compelling on its own, but what sets him apart is his deep commitment to empowering neurodiverse candidates. We'll talk more about that in a minute. He's built a practice that not only teaches people how to brag about themselves with confidence, but also helps those who think differently navigate the interview process with clarity and authenticity. He's been quoted by outlets such as US News and World Report, CBS, and Yahoo, and his clients have landed jobs at some of the top global companies. Ramon brings charisma, clarity, and a whole lot of strategy to the table. And today we're diving into how he reframed his own career and helps others do the same. Ramon, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Always a pleasure.
So tell me, what is neurodiversity? That might be the first time I've heard that term, and I'm sure for some of our listeners that may be the same. So tell us more about that.
Neurodiversity is where people who may think different fall under. People who might be under the autism spectrum, people who might have been diagnosed with Asperger's, high functioning autism is another term people use, people who have ADHD, basically people who just see things, perceive things, compute things a little bit different than neurotypicals, people who are not neurodivergent. So that's what that is. I'm not a doctor, so I don't diagnose people with this. Usually the people that come to me tell me that they fall under that or that they identify as being neurodivergent. And my job as an interview coach is to help them prepare for those interviews and help them understand what we need to do in a way that works for them and not for everyone else.
So what are some challenges that neurodivergent candidates will face that some of the neurotypical candidates do not interact with?
A lot of times it's the questions that companies ask. There's a term or a saying people say that once you talk to someone who's on the autism spectrum, you've talked to one person on the autism spectrum. Everyone's different. But one of the things that a lot of people who, for example, have Asperger's see in common, a lot of them, not everyone, but a lot of them, is that sometimes they're a little bit too literal. So when, for example, a typical interview question is, have you ever struggled working in a team? A neurotypical person, when they hear that question, they know like, oh yeah, so they're asking me to give an example of when I've struggled in a team or when I worked in a team or whatever. And they'll answer that way. They'll say, yes, a time I struggled with a team was when and they'll give an example. A neurodivergent person, when they hear that question, the question is a yes or no question in their mind. So when they get asked, have you ever worked in a team that struggled? They might say yes. Interviewer, maybe the first time I said, can you give me an example? And the person might give an example. But maybe ask the second or third question, or maybe sometimes from the beginning, the interviewer will say, you know what, they didn't really give me an example, so I don't know if they're saying the truth or not. From the neurodivergent person's perspective, they answered the question, which is true, right? The question is the yes or no question, but it's not really a yes or no question. That's not really what they're trying to find out. They're trying to find out, give me an example of when you've worked in the team or struggled in the team or whatever the question was. So a lot of times that's one of the hiccups that people who I work with, people who have high functioning autism or have Asperger's, they're very educated, very talented, very high grades. They know their stuff, but they stumble during the interview because, again, they get asked questions like this, where a neurotypical person might understand like, oh yeah, they want a specific example. Neurodivergent person might say, no, they asked me a yes or no question, so I'm going to say yes or no. Why do I need to say something else? So when I work with these candidates, I like to tell people that a lot of people, a lot of career services, for example, university career services, they teach you the how or the what. Like you have to have a strong resume. but they never explain to you, and they might explain to you what a strong resume looks like, but they never explain to you why you need a strong resume. And that's what I do with the clients that I work with. In my practice, I explain the how and the what, more importantly, the why. Once you explain that to people, neurodivergent or not, people understand like, oh, now I get it. Now I know these rules that everyone's been playing around of this game that I can't understand. I know the rules, so now I can beat everyone because I know what the rules are.
I could also imagine where in an interview setting like that, where they just answer the question at hand rather than going on and elaborating, that over time, maybe the first question, the employer may see past it, but if after that becomes a pattern, employers could interpret that as, oh, maybe this person's not interested. They're not really willing to divulge. They're just going through this as a check the box type of exercise, when in reality, it's they're not asking the right questions. So in your experience, Ramon, what are some of the things that employers can do to help make sure that, the neurodivergent candidates are able to have, a very compelling and thoughtful and complete interview? Is that they should be asking better questions, using a different question methoding? Thing that comes to my mind is like using a Socratic questioning method, where your questions are not yes or no, they're more open-ended. What suggestions do you have for employers?
For employers, I would say ask better questions. I think most of us employers, we think we're great at interviewing people, but if we really think about it, we're not. But we just don't like to admit that. And again, we just go as an employer, we're interviewing, and I've done it before when I worked in corporate America. When I interview people, I ask the questions that HR gave me. But a lot of times those questions were not, I could get a great answer, but the answer maybe does not have anything to do with the job. So for example, my background is in accounting. I work for the Big Four. To me, it was always amazing that we would hire people who were very eloquent and like were very outgoing. And we hire those people, but in the back of my head, I was like, well, why do we need the social butterfly? I'm not saying they shouldn't be accountants, but we're not going to put them in the front. This person is going to be in the back room doing tax returns. But the person who maybe is very capable, very technical, we didn't give them a chance because they couldn't, they didn't explain their answers right. So I think if we would ask better questions, we probably could have gotten better candidates or the best candidates for those roles. So I think that's what employers should do. At the same time, I think it's a two-way street. For example, none of my clients have received the job through a hiring initiative. So there's companies out there that do hiring initiative for people who are on autism spectrum. And that's great. I'm glad they're doing that. But, my candidates, my clients, they can't wait for a hiring initiative. Those hiring initiatives usually just hire one person out of thousands of people. What we do instead is we make sure that we apply to any jobs that they want. So we compete against, quote unquote, the other candidates and anyone else. So what I always recommend is like, let's make a business case for you and let's make sure we're ready for these interviews. So whenever they ask you a question, no matter what question it is, make sure you bring an example. And I call it the show me a pic strategy. So, and there's a big long story, but basically if someone tells you some outrageous story about what happened last night, that you met Taylor Swift and her fiance.
Show me a pic or it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. So when I tell them is like, okay, think about this. Whenever they ask you a question during an interview, show me a picture or it didn't happen. The picture is the example. So you can say, they can ask you, are you good at accounting? Are you good at computer science? Are you good at whatever? The answer can be yes, but you have to show me a picture. Yes, I'm very good at that. For example, in my last class, I was doing a Java project where I XYZ ABC. That's the picture. And that's what I always tell my candidates, my clients, like, let's focus on that. Like, we can wait for the world to be perfect and everyone gets the same chance and all that stuff, but we don't have time. You need a job now. We need a co-op now, an internship now. So let's make sure we do our part. And we don't want to compete against everyone else. We want to outsmart them. And that's really the strategy that I take with my clients. We outsmart the competition.
You made me think of something about how you mentioned sometimes, or a lot of people are not that good at interviewing people. They don't really know what they want or what they need. I see that a lot of times in my line of work where we get job descriptions where the company takes time to spell out the daily activities. But what I will a lot of times find out is, the ideal candidate they ultimately hire, a lot of times maybe they didn't meet all the qualifications on the job description, or a different case is maybe they met all of them and they had other things. And those other things are what made them get hired, although they were nowhere on the job description. And so it just goes to show how I think it's really important in this day and age that everybody's very open-minded, because, we have to acknowledge that not everybody's good at these types of things. And also, this world is a very diverse place, and we should be open and accepting to all different types of people and walks of life. And so leads me to my next question, which is, why should companies consider a neurodivergent candidate over a neurotypical one?
I don't know if they should consider one over the other. I do know that neurodivergent candidates, again, they're as smart as everyone else. They're as capable. They can do things that everyone else can. They might see things a little bit different. They might learn a little bit different than some other people. But I think it's wrong for companies to maybe exclude some of these candidates just because they might think different. And at the end of the day, that's what's going to actually make your business better, having different perspectives. So I think that's really why companies should be better. Again, there's a lot of companies doing a lot of things. Some of those things are in the heart is in the right place. I just don't think the process itself is when it comes to hiring neurodivergent candidates. And that's fine. I'm glad they're doing something. But again, I don't know when it will be equal playing field for everyone. My clients don't have the time to wait for that. We need to do our part to get there. So yeah, maybe one day, it'll be perfect. But in the meantime, I'm here to help those people out.
And I will say too, right now, we've been experiencing kind of an unprecedented talent shortage where, we've got generational differences. We have, people who are going through college, not going to college, sort of having different career aspirations. And so the workforce is tight. And I think companies need to acknowledge, hey, we can't just necessarily build a perfect human and that person show up on day one and do the job that we need to be open-minded. We need to think outside the box because sometimes we don't even know. We don't know what we need. We think we do. But I would also say it's even exacerbated these days when it's harder and harder to find a person for, the right job. There's so many open jobs out there right now. And so many people, need really good people, and good people come from all different walks of life.
I always tell my clients when they're looking at job descriptions, sometimes most of my clients are college students. A lot of times they look at the job description and they say, well, I can't fill all these things out. And I like to teach them that a job description, a lot of times, is the wish list. Like when you're making your letter to Santa, you put, I'm from the 80s. So I put 3 Nintendo games and then 5 G.I. Joes and the Battleship and then 5 He-Mans and, whatever. And what did I get? I got 1 Nintendo game, 2 G.I. Joes, and like 1 G.I. Joe vehicle. And I was happy with it, right? But if you could shoot your shot, you get it. Okay, what do you want? Like, I want everything. I want a candidate who has 10 years of experience, but who's a recent graduate, who's funny, but not too funny, and also who wants to work just for free.
Yeah.
That's what the company wants, right? But that candidate doesn't exist. It's a wish list, right? At the end of the day, the company gets the candidates that are available. And, again, sometimes people say it's a employer's market and employees market. At the end of the day, both parties have to make a decision. So even I know students say, well, I need a job to graduate. I get it. But at the same time, you want to make sure you go to the right company. So you need to ask questions and see where that fits into your goals. They'll ask you questions. And most of you decide at the end of the day, they decide if they want to make an offer to you, but you also decide if you want to accept that offer. It works both ways. It's a two-way street. So make sure you get all the data points that you need to make a right decision.
One thing we always tell our candidates is a very common question you'll hear in an interview is at the end, okay, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any questions? And I always tell candidates, you should never say no. You should always have questions, not only just to make sure you are demonstrating your excitement and your interest in the offer, but at the end of the day, you're going to go work here and spend a lot of time at this place. I would hope when you make a major decision like that in your life, whether you're buying a car, buying a house, picking a partner, in this case, picking a job, that you ask enough questions where you feel like it's the right opportunity for you to take your talents, to go grow, to have your, spend a good part of your life at this place. And so I always tell candidates, absolutely, while it will feel like they're interviewing you, I think you also need to be very mindful that you're also interviewing them to make sure that it's a right fit for both parties. So I think that's very well said.
Both parties need to make a decision. You need to get all information so you can make the right decision. And you need to give them all the information they need so they can make the right decision themselves.
So you're an interview coach. So I imagine you have dissected every part of an interview. And I think probably the most common ways that interviews are conducted is with the very first question, which a lot of times is, tell me about yourself. So what's a common mistake that people will make when they're asked that question?
Most people, when they answer that question, they think it's an open-ended question. And I don't think it's an open-ended question at all. And I like to tell my clients this, and I always explain it thoroughly because I don't want people to misunderstand what I'm saying. I say, no one cares about you. And I don't mean you're not valuable. I don't mean you're not important. I also don't mean that companies and capitalism is bad. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that they don't care about you because they have their own problems. So when a company's hiring someone, the problem is not that they need someone or that they need a body count. That's not the problem. The problem is something else. The problem can be found in the job description. The job description will tell you exactly what the problem is. If they had figured out how to get AI or some software or something to do the solution to the problem, they would have done it already. But they can't. So that means that in our day and age, they need to hire someone to solve that problem for them. So when they ask you, tell me about yourself, you shouldn't focus on saying things like, well, I want a company where I can grow and develop myself and like expand my, like, no, they don't care. They don't care, right? Not because they're bad, but because they have a problem they need to solve. So when you present yourself, whether it's in tell me about yourself or anywhere else during the interview, all answers you provide should present yourself as a solution to the problem that they have. And sometimes people say, well, no, like I should talk, like, okay, quick example. You call me and you're trying to figure out if I'm the right coach for you. Maybe you don't ask me directly, but at some point, some people ask me, why should I hire you as a coach? If I were to say, well, I have a golden retriever and he loves a special kind of snack and they're expensive and they're organic and they're from like Alaska and blah, 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 and they're expensive. I need money for that. That's why you should hire me to be your coach. What's the person going to say? It's like, that's your problem. I don't care about your stupid dog. Like, that's your problem, not my problem. My problem is that I need a job. Same thing here when you're interviewing. You focus on like, well, I need a place where I can grow and develop. They're like, that's not my problem, kid. That's your problem. My problem is I need someone to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, right? So again, whenever you answer that question or any other question for that matter during an interview, present yourself as a solution to the problem. And that's going to guarantee that you're going to get the job because you explain to them how you're going to solve that problem. Either you've done it before, you know how to do it, or you know what the problem is. Sometimes people don't know what the problem is until you tell them that you know that the problem is this. And they're like, oh, wow, that's great that you understand what we're looking for.
One of my favorite quotes that I think speaks directly to this is by former President John F. Kennedy, where he says, don't ask what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And I think that should be top of mind when candidates are interviewing is you need to make sure it's very clear the value that you can provide, the problems that you can solve, because you're right. They're looking for someone to do that, especially if you're being interviewed by your supervisor, your boss. The hope is that your work will help alleviate work off of their plate. And so they want to be able to very clearly understand that you have the skills and the tool set to be able to do that for them and execute on that objective. And then hopefully, as you execute and do really good work, the hope is that then they will give you more responsibility. Your roles will widen, opportunities will come knocking, and that's how you grow your career. But you're right. It's always important to make sure you're starting and you're making very explicit how you are there with your particular set of skills, to put it in the Liam Neeson famous quote, I have a particular set of skills, and that you're there to solve a problem.
One thing too to add, so obviously answer the question. If you want, some people say, well, I need a template. Okay, template. Name major school, some of your technical skills, why you're interested in the job, and then bring it back to them. A question I like to ask at the end of when people say, tell me about yourself, I would say, what about my resume attracted you the most? Because that tells you they're going to answer that question by telling you, well, I really like how you know how to do Java, or you know how to do whatever program, or you've worked this other place. That gives you clues to what the problem is. So they say, well, I really like how you like to use Java, or you have a project where you did Java. What's your next question? Oh, so do you guys use Java here? Like, yes, actually, for this role, we blah, blah, blah. Now, okay, let me go deep into Java experience because that's what they're looking for.
A point you made earlier is about AI, and it feels like everywhere you look, all the major headlines, if you pick up any major newspaper or media source, AI is on the front cover of everything these days. So I imagine you deal with a little bit of AI, or probably a lot of bit of AI with your clients and navigating the job world. I know we do on our side of the table. So curious, should AI be part of the job search process, and how do you recommend people use AI when going through interviews?
I like using AI for some things. I don't think it's there yet for resumes. A lot of times people say, well, I'm going to have AI do my resume. AI can only do something with what you give it. If you don't know what your story is, if you don't know what you bring to the table, AI can't do anything with it because it doesn't know. It doesn't know. It doesn't know you. So you need to know what stories you want to talk about, how you want to present them, how it fits with this particular job you're applying to. If you do that, you can throw it into AI. It might give you a fluffier resume, fancier words and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I don't think you should use AI to do your resume. You can use it to enhance your resume or improve it maybe. But even then, I would kind of be watchful on that.
Let me make a really good point here, because I think this is really profound too, especially in this day and age where so many applications are done online. Obviously, if you're going through a recruiting firm, it's a little bit different story. But if you're going to be applying directly online to a major job engine or a major job collection process, a lot of times they are using AI to read resumes. And a lot of times now, AI can find other AI. And so if you
Yeah.
are writing your resume with AI and you're not adding, at least going in there and editing and adding your own flair, it can be an instant red flag that says this person didn't even write their own resume. This was written by another computer, in which case you're automatically discarded from contention. And so I definitely recommend, if you're going to use AI, use it carefully and do not rely on it, and make sure you're constantly reviewing it, make sure that the statements you're making are accurate and complete, and that you make sure you you include really, important details about you, because you're right. It only knows as much as you give it. And a lot of times what people are just prompting AI is, write me a resume. I'm a computer engineer. I'm a software developer. I do this tool, and it'll spit out a resume. It'll spell out the high level things that you do, but it's pretty easy, I think, especially in this day and age, for that to be picked up on, and then it ends up biting you in the long run.
Yeah. And even then, when you use it, you can do it. Some people say, well, put the job description and say, give me a resume that matches the job description. Like, okay, but it'll do it. But then one of those things might not be true about you. Or the other way around is like, okay, make my resume for like what we have is like, okay, but still your story might not all be there. And also especially for interview preparation, AI will give you fancy language. It will give you a lot of fluff. But at the end of the day, if you don't know your story, it's not going to be helpful at all. I like using AI to help me find jobs. So for example, you could put in AI something like, give me the top employers for this kind of industry. And it'll do a quick, basically it's a Google search, right? Fancy Google search. It'll spit that out. And then you can start focusing, okay, let me do the things that the AI can't do it. There's some programs out there that send out LinkedIn messages to people. And I mean, I guess you could do that. And it makes things efficient, but does it make them effective? At the end of the day, there's a balance in between both. You want to be fast, but you also want to make sure you're doing good work. You want to connect with the right people. You can connect with 1,000 people today in one day, and that's fine. Are they effective? Is that going to help you? You can apply 1,000. Again, here's another thing, like the LinkedIn quick apply, easy apply. You can apply to 100 jobs today, but are you going to get any of them? Probably not, right? So focus on being effective and efficient.
When I used to sit in a different chair, when I was on the other side of when I was reviewing resumes, it was sometimes very baffling how we would have a job post out there and we would get over 100 submissions. And I would say 95% of them were people that were not even in the industry, not even in the right. We were posting for finance jobs, but it would be like HR people, or it'd be like people who don't have anywhere near the remote amount of skills. And I just always reminded myself, like, why does this happen? I think you're right. It's because some people think it's a numbers game. And I do think it is to some extent a numbers game. Important that you get yourself out there, and you have to, sometimes do a couple of interviews and apply a couple of places to be able to get responses back. But I think it's important that there's quality included in that analysis and that effort, because you don't just want to be blindly, because it's not going to be fruitful. You'll spend all this time, you're thinking you're increasing your chances, when in reality, it's not improving your success rate by any material amount.
Sometimes candidates tell me, these are college students, 22 years old. They apply to jobs and they tell me, I applied to 250 jobs this semester and I can't get an interview. And I tell them, like, I'm 44. For easy math, I'm twice your age. I haven't applied to 100 jobs in my life. So how is it possible for you to apply to 250? I think the record I had was someone came to me and applied to 575 jobs in one semester, and they got one interview. A phone screen, actually. It wasn't even an interview. Mm-hmm. And that's why they reached out to me. And obviously, we're able to help them get a very good job. But again, like, if you start seeing that you're going over 100 applications, nothing's happening, something wrong with the process.
Yeah, understood. Ramon, we're getting close to the end of time here, but I wanted to see if you could share a success story that you had with one of your clients. Obviously, you've mentored and coached a wide variety of people, but is there a story that has really resonated with you, or that stuck out with you, that really demonstrates the power of having a coach in their corner?
One of the first neurodivergent clients I worked with, his mom called me, explained the situation, and said, I just need him to get an internship to graduate. That's all we need. Can you help him out? And I said, sure, I'll work with him. I never wanted someone to just get a job. I wanted to get the job. I wanted him to have a career. And this person was a computer science major who was diagnosed with Asperger's since he was little. And, I think within 45 days or so, he had 2 job offers. He had 3 interviews, 2 job offers at great companies. And he accepted one of them. They paid him a lot of money on stuff. And it was a career. And then his mom calls me crying and says, I was just hoping for a computer repair job, right? A computer repair shop, just enough to hit the credit for the graduation, but you gave him a career. And she said, what I'm very grateful of is that you allow me to have dreams that I didn't allow myself to have. So she was saying that she was worried that what was going to happen to him when she was gone, right? Because they told her when he was little, he was nonverbal. And they said, probably should put him in a home because he's never going to talk. When he started going to school, he's never going to finish school. You have to put him in a special school. He went to the regular school everyone else went to. He's never going to graduate high school. He was in college. He's never going to graduate college. He's going to come back. He's going to not do well in college. He did very well. He's never going to get a job. And again, you have to worry what's going to happen to him when you're gone. And now the kid had a job where he had benefits, a career path, got paid very well. And she said, now I'm allowed myself a dream that maybe one day I don't have to worry about what's going to happen to him when I'm gone, because he can support himself. He can support himself now with the money he's making, right? He can support a family, which means I might have grandkids. I never allowed myself to dream that maybe one day I would have grandkids because I was so worried about what's going to happen to him when I'm gone. But now I can dream of maybe having grandkids one day. And she was telling me there's a lot of kids out there just like him that need your help. These are smart kids. They're very capable, very talented. It's just the interview process messes them up. And, just like that story, I had so many moms call me crying, telling me that, I don't like saying this out loud, but they tell me like, you made a miracle. You helped this kid get a job that when everyone has told me he's never going to talk, he's never going to graduate high school, he's never going to go to college, he's never going to get a job. Now the kid works at Facebook, at Amazon, at Netflix, at NASA, Blue Origin, Goldman Sachs, all these companies, Fortune 500 companies, and they have very good jobs. I've had parents call me telling me he makes more money than we do at his first job out of college. And again, they tell me like, we never thought that could happen. Again, we thought we were going to have to put him in a home because that's what everyone else told us, but we never gave up. And we're glad you never gave up on him either. So that's, to me, I think that's very rewarding. I used to work exclusively with C-level executives, and I would help these people get a bunch more money, a different title or senior VP on top of their title. But helping a college students literally change their career path. Again, someone that everyone said he's never going to make it ever. I've been proving everyone wrong. Obviously, the parents are very happy. The students are very happy. Again, I feel like that's what I need to be doing right now.
Sounds like you went from maybe rewriting a single chapter in somebody's book to focusing in an area where you've basically allowed them to rewrite the rest of their story, which is extremely profound. That's got to be extremely rewarding. And man, that sounds like a really cool job to get to wake up and do every single day.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So as long as I can, I'm going to do this.
Ramon, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. How can people find out more about you?
You can go to my website, persuasiveinterview.com, or you look me up on LinkedIn. My name is Ramon Santillan, RAMON SANTILLAN, or you can go to linkedin.com/IN/interview coach.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up another great episode of the Career Can Do podcast. See you at the next one.
We thank you for tuning in to our Career Can Do podcast. We make no guarantees on results for your particular quest, but we hope you enjoy the information presented. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely that of the guest or speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Marianne Fairmouth and Fairmouth and Company. Thank you.